everyone following us in our social media page. I'm up early this morning. It's about 5:30 in the morning. If you can see back over there, it is still dark outside, but I'm up early, about to go for a morning walk with a special someone, and we'll be having a special conversation. This conversation you do not want to miss. I'm excited, and it's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm excited. I'm about to drive over right now, so stay tuned. Lord Fakafanua.
Hey, Lala.
Should we go for a walk?
Yeah.
Before we start our conversation, Lord Fakafanua, and our walk, there's a reason why I'm wearing this. I know I've got my walking attire underneath this, but first, because I'm talking to you, you're noble. Second, I actually want to advocate for this, because you can actually put your keys in these little flaps, and then since I'm walking and talking, I've got my notes as well. So it's good little, if people want to walk with, run with their tawala, it's good. Water bottles can actually fit in here, so yeah. In the closing, the soft closing of Parliament, in the King's speech, he advocates for us Tongans to going back into to our plantation, going back to our land, and trying not to consume so much of the food that we import from overseas. Your feelings towards that bit of the speech?
Yeah, so His Majesty is worried about import substitution, and it's about food.
Okay, just about to pick up my water. We started our walk with Lord Fakafanua and talk, but it got a bit windy. So me and Lord Fakafanua ended up finishing off our walk. What a hard walk it was. I'm just here to pick up my water. We're about to go into the little restaurant at the swimming pool area in Tauliki and finish off our conversation that we started before we walked. But big thank you to Lord Fakafanua for pushing healthy living and being active, especially getting me out this morning for that awesome walk. What a good little walk we had this morning, and if anyone out there that's going to be watching this when I posted Lord Fakafanua, the reason why I wore my tawala on top of my walking gear this morning is I was first talking to you, one of our nobles here in Tonga, and it's traditional for us to wear tawala when we talk, and especially when I'm going to be posting in public. And second to that, I found myself finding that the tawala was a good call. I was able to put my keys, my water bottle, my notes, and able to walk. I might actually just keep wearing this when I do my walks from now on, Fakafanua.
Yeah, I think you should do that, Lala.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a trend. I'm going to make it a trend from now on.
Yeah, I think we should go to day 5 and start again.
First question. Why, when I asked you if we can have this conversation, that you wanted us to do a morning walk?
First thing, Parliament's closed and I want to get out of the office. And, since we're trying to be more healthy, why not do it out here? Fresh air, maybe we can be more relaxed.
It leads on to my first question with the King's speech at the soft closing of Parliament. He mentions us going back into the plantation. I know with NTD, as you mentioned before, it's not just the active lifestyle, it's eating healthy, what we consume. And he's saying for us to go back into the plantation, obviously it's for us to eat more healthy, and not, he even mentions to about the imported goods that we always consume as well.
What the King was talking about is import substitution, and it's really about food security. So during these uncertain times with COVID-19 and restrictions on the border, it's really important that we maintain a regular and stable food source. So if we miss a couple of shipments of flour or kapapulu or whatever the people need to eat, it's important that they have options locally. And on top of that, our local food source is healthier.
Yeah.
So if people start growing vegetables, then they can have healthier food to eat. We'll have more options, and it's also about lifestyle. Going back to the plantation means you have a more active lifestyle. So it ticks many boxes, and what the King's really concerned about is people's food security. So we need to be prepared. We need to start planning today so that if something happens tomorrow, people still have food to eat.
In the King's speech, he does allude to as well to the rollout of the vaccination here in Tonga and illicit drugs, but we'll get into illicit drugs later. But your thoughts, I know in your position as Speaker and also in Parliament, you have privilege to getting to more information than majority of Tonga. How do you see the rollout of the vaccination here in Tonga?
I think so far the rollout has been very successful. My understanding is the Ministry of Health wants to get at least 70% of their vaccination target. That means they will be close to getting herd immunity for the COVID-19 pandemic. My understanding of vaccinations, we need 95% of the population vaccinated against polio. And for measles, it's 85%. And so vaccination for 70% for COVID, my personal opinion is it's a bit low, but this is the government's national target. And so far we're on track. Tongatapu, I think, is just under 75%. And it's good to see that Hapai and Vava'u are very keen on the vaccination.
There was talk, Lord Fakafanua, about making it a compulsory vaccination. Your thoughts on that?
So vaccination, so all government vaccination programs are compulsory under the existing law. And all they did when the government decided to add to that law, the Vaccination Act, was to add a penalty if you don't have a legal excuse, a good enough excuse. So I'm sure there are certain beliefs and people have belief systems that might prevent them from taking up the mandatory vaccination. And I guess that's something that could be tested. But it's not mandatory until the CEO of the Ministry of Health declares it a national health emergency and makes it mandatory. So right now it's not mandatory, but the law gives them the authority to make it mandatory if they see that we need to. And that's where that number I was talking about is important. If we're below those numbers, like take polio for instance, if our vaccination was under 95%, then all the vaccination will be for nothing. And the same for measles. If it was under the 85 herd immunity rate, then it would be all for nothing. And I guess that's where the concern is. Government's target for COVID-19 is 70%. And as long as we reach the 70, we don't have to force the other 30 to vaccinate. But that's all, using what we know today. The number might be different tomorrow. And then there's always the issue with other variants and how effective the current vaccine might be. But even then, you might get more protection from a third or booster shot. So it's good to get vaccinated now, and it would help get you set up for COVID when it eventually comes to Tonga, because I believe COVID-19 will come to Tonga. It's just a matter of when, and we need to use this time to be as prepared as we can in our food preparation and also with our vaccination.
There was two speeches that was done by the King. The opening of Parliament and the soft closing of Parliament. The opening of Parliament stirred up a lot of conversation because of the speech and when it was delivered. From the opening to the closing of Parliament, has Parliament passed any law to fulfill the speech he delivered in the opening?
So since His Majesty opened Parliament this year, we've managed to approve and pass 22 laws, 31 annual reports, and 33 committee reports. And I think that's a big major achievement. Some of the laws were specifically to address some of the concerns from His Majesty. One of them was regarding the public enterprises. So the annual reports for the public enterprises used to go to Cabinet, and Parliament has changed that, so now they report directly to Parliament.
The reason why I asked you about the law that it was passed, Lord Fakafanua, you actually stirred up some conversation about a death penalty law against drugs, and illicit drugs is a major problem here in Tonga, not just socially, but with our courts and just a problem here in Tonga. Why did you wanted to have this death penalty? We still have it in Tonga, what I've heard, and just adding on drugs into death penalty.
We're abolitionist by practice,
Okay.
and death penalty in Tonga currently exists for murder and also treason. What I proposed to do was to extend the death penalty to include illicit drugs, but just the serious cases. So if you export or import more than 4 kilograms of a Class A drug, then you could be facing the death penalty or life imprisonment. So I propose to attach death penalty as a disincentive. We understand that death penalty against murder is difficult to back because murder is usually done in the heat of the moment, crimes of passion, not really premeditated. So people don't weigh up the consequences of when they commit that crime. But when you want to deal in drugs, you're affecting the community, and children and people's lives are changed forever, negatively. And that's completely premeditated because you're profiting from getting people addicted to a substance that is highly addictive, such as most Class A drugs. So being premeditated, having profit from it, I think is an offence that should be punishable to the highest degree.
Which is death.
Which is death.
Yeah.
And we haven't abolished death penalty in Tonga, even though we don't really practice it. I thought maybe it was the best approach to take it to the furthest that we can.
How far did it get? Because
there was some lively debate in Parliament. And people brought their religious beliefs, and they were talking about how Tonga's enlightened now, which is fair. And in the end, Parliament decided to cap the maximum penalty for that offence with a life sentence.
I did hear and correct me if I'm wrong, Lord Fakafanua, is with death penalty, it's hard to get cooperations from countries overseas. For example, New Zealand, Australia, America, and rest of the other countries. I know there was a drug case where a container was taken to New Zealand. What I'm hearing is right or wrong. For New Zealand to be able to cooperate with Tonga, death penalty had to be taken off the table. Is what I'm hearing right?
Well, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. They all stand against the death penalty.
Okay.
But there are still countries around the world that have the death penalty. In our region, Papua New Guinea, Tonga, and in the West, the United States still has the death penalty in some of the states. But as a matter of principle, Australia and New Zealand may not cooperate with our police if they know that information might lead to someone being sentenced or potentially facing the death penalty. So if we did pass the law, that recent case would have been an interesting test case of how far New Zealand would cooperate. And we know that 30 kilos of methamphetamine is a lot. And that would have been very interesting to see.
This year is a big year, 2021 election year. Parliament has just done its soft closing. All the people's representative, I know they'll be gearing up to campaign. Not only that, they'll be going against other people that wants to campaign as well. But we'll get into election on my next question. The question that I wanted to ask is, and a lot of people do want to know this, the process of a noble becoming a noble representative? How does that election work, or that voting work?
Yeah, so there are not that many nobles, and the nobles are divided into the regions.
Yeah.
So there are nobles in Tongatapu, there are nobles in Hapai, there are nobles in Vava'u, and nobles in Niue. So these regions each elect their own reps.
Yeah.
So from Tongatapu, there are 3 nobles that are elected.
Yeah.
The 4th noble in Tongatapu is normally the representative for Ewa. And in Hapai, where I'm elected,
Yeah.
there are 7 of us
Okay.
for 2 noble seats. So in our election, the 7 nobles, they elect their 2 reps from
Yeah.
Hapai.
Yeah.
And the same is done for Vava'u and the Niues.
And with the general election, what in the previous years, what has Tongan learned or you've learned that could be done better this year?
I hope that the work that we've been doing in Parliament and with our partners and stakeholders on encouraging the youth will bear fruit in this election. We want to see the results of having more youth participation in politics. We want to see them participate in the election. And those who have come of age, 21 years old, on the day before the day of the election, should participate. They should register and use their authority on the ballot, make their voice count, and cast that vote for your representative to be in Parliament.
Come November in the election, if a new government is elected in, and the reason why I'm asking this, Lord Fakafanua, I have spoken to one of the High Commissioners here in Tonga, and this person attended an event that was done by the last administration in this person's government, but yet this administration has to finish it before they can move on. If a new government is elected in November, the inner workings of the current government, does the new government finish that inner working, or do they just...
So it really depends, Lala, because there are certain projects that, 3-5-year projects, and if the government changes halfway through, they normally see those projects through to the end. And just an example, the illicit drugs policy and the symposium, that all started with the previous government. And the current government approved the policy that was started from the previous government, and I understand there's a symposium coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up on the 6th and the 7th.
Yes, early next month. So that's proof that certain projects will last through different governments. But of course, if the government of the day is changed, then new government, new vision, new policy, there might be changes.
After the election, there will be a representative being voted into the House. I saw that you put out that if a representative is away from the House for a long period of time, they automatically lose their seat.
Yeah, I didn't put that out, Lala. That was a new law.
I just saw your face in the law on the bottom, and I thought.
Yeah, that was a private member's bill.
Yeah.
So what happened was that in the past we've had members who are away for up to 12 months, and some members have lost their seats as a consequence. Some have made it back and reset the time, so to speak, and then be away for up to 12 months again. And this has been something that I've observed since I came into Parliament before 2010. Many members use this clause to be away from the House, and I think that that's an injustice, both to the taxpayers who pay the members their salary throughout the year, and to the voters who voted those representatives into the House. And it applies equally to members of the nobles and members, representatives of the people. And I think it's probably more fair to lower that threshold from 12 months to 3 months. When I proposed that in the House, it took some convincing, but the House decided that it was best to give the Speaker some space to apply to the House to extend it for another 3 months. So technically you can be away as a representative for 3 months, plus another 3 months if the House approves it.
There's different reasons why a representative can lose he or she's seat. I know with the case with the where a representative who was also a minister used the clause 23, and I saw, and the reason why I'm asking, I saw that you reviewed that law 23. Why?
Yeah, so you're talking about clause 23
Clause
of the
23, sorry.
of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And clause 23, I think it was 2013 or 2014, was recently amended.
Yeah.
After my predecessor,
Yeah.
Lord Lasike, was unseated because of his case in the judiciary. So clause 23 unseated him, and then through the appeal, he was
Acquitted.
yes, he was acquitted.
Yeah.
So the government of the day didn't want government to be liable for someone who'd lost their seat, especially if that person got acquitted. And more recently, we had a case where someone has been imprisoned who was a member of parliament. So I had a look at clause 23 again, and I think it was more appropriate to leave it as it was before, and not suspend the operation of clause 23 until an appeal is heard. Because if the appeal is heard and it's upheld, then it's business as usual. But if the appeal is heard and they're acquitted, then government will be liable. And I think it's better for government to be liable than for us to suspend people's right to have a member of parliament. And also, members of parliament should be law-abiding citizens, and as leaders should be accountable to a higher standard than everyone else. We don't want a member of parliament representing people and working from prison. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
To maintain a member of parliament's rights and be paid by parliament, and we need members of parliament to be accountable for their actions, not have a special treatment, for instance.
The reason why, Fakafanua, I've asked about the clause 23 and crime and so forth. Tonga is a very small island, and there's a saying, I don't know if anyone knows this saying but myself, but small town talk. Yeah? Does Parliament look into conversation that's made about representatives in our country? Because there's a lot of conversation that's made about representative in your parliament or in the parliament that's linked to criminal activities in some sort of ways. And I know these conversations are not fact, and I know me asking you this, people might even watching or hearing saying that, oh, this is just rumors and this is the... But is there somebody, or do you guys even take notice of it, or do you guys look at it or say, oh yeah, we should have somebody looking into this sort of conversation that's happening in Tonga? The question is, in our country, because it's small, there's people that talks about certain members of parliament that is involved in illegal activities. I can even say it now, involved in some sort of illicit drugs activities.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, do you guys take notice and look at it, or just wait to let it come out to be true?
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of talk on social media, and people have certain opinions about some of the leaders, and I think as an institution, Parliament needs to uphold the rule of law and follow due process.
Yeah.
We have a social media law, and you can't just make a false accusation or make up a story about someone. So I think those who know should probably report those leaders to the police. I mean, don't blast yourself on social media and start running people down without showing us real proof and hard evidence, because we want that information to be useful in the court,
Yeah.
and we want that information to lead to a prosecution. If one of our leaders is actually, breaking the law, and you know about that, then take that information to the right place.
Yeah.
If you're worried about your safety or about retribution or whatever, then I'm sure there are certain people that you can rely on that can convey the information. But what we need to see happen is the right information given to the police, and then Crown prosecutors prosecuting these people so that justice can be heard. And it's easy to get swept up. I think a lot of people just want things to happen quickly,
Yeah.
but these things take time, and I'm sure if the police already suspect certain people, they'll be following and gathering their evidence, and hopefully soon we'll see people getting prosecuted for what they're doing.
The last question I have for you, Lord Fakafanua, in both speeches, the first and the second, His Majesty urges the people to vote wisely. How important is that message to you?
That's really important. Yeah, because if the people don't vote wisely, then they wouldn't have wise people in Parliament. If you vote silly people, then you'll have a silly Parliament. So I think His Majesty is just enforcing the point that the government of the day and the people's representatives that you have and the nobles' representatives are the people that the nobles and the people have elected. So we need to put our best foot forward, and if we want the best for Tonga, we need to vote the best people. And if we want healthy people in our Parliament, then vote healthy people into Parliament. It's kind of obvious, but I think His Majesty is just reminding people that they have a duty to fulfill during the election, and you have a right to voice your opinion of who you think is best to represent you.
Thank you very much, Lord Fakafanua, and not only for the conversation, but getting me out to have a walk early in the morning.
Yeah, no problem. Now we can have breakfast.
Now we can have breakfast.
Yeah.
Malo pita.
Malo.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.